So I've been going through the Sega Genesis library, and to be perfectly honest, I'm getting a little bored. While there is the occasional gem, a lot of the games remind me about the aspects of retro gaming that I dislike. And unlike with the SNES, I have yet to find any games that I can say hold up perfectly. A lot of them are okay, but nothing really that great. So I'm getting pretty eager to move on to another console's library, namely the PS1, but I did want to give a quick look to a number of Genesis games that I did play, but didn't feel like doing full reviews for. First up, we have Alex Kidd. I've heard that Alex Kidd is something of a secondary mascot for Sega after Sonic the Hedgehog, but honestly, I don't really see the appeal. At least with Sonic, there was a distinct style in both visuals and gameplay that made it unique, while Alex the Kid is just... It's not bad, but it's not really anything to write home about. Alien Soldier. This game seems pretty cool, with awesome graphics and the unique ability to select from 6 different weapon types that each handle a little differently. But I can't get very far in the game. Whether it's because the game is too hard or because I suck, I will leave to speculation. But I can't really give a full review to a game that I didn't get very far in. Well, I could, but it wouldn't exactly be a fair or accurate review. Elysia Dragoon. At first, this game seemed pretty cool. You play as a girl who can use magic and summon one of several different familiars to help her on her journey. It controls well, the powers are fun to use, and on the whole it seems like a solid platformer. But then I discovered a massive flaw with the game, namely that it has no lives or continues. If you die, even once, it's straight back to the beginning. And sorry, but that's a deal breaker for me, so moving on. Batman Returns. There were several Batman games for the Sega Genesis, and none of them were really that good. Batman Returns is probably the best one, but it's still not a game I can recommend. It captures the look and atmosphere of Batman, though I have no idea how faithful it is to the source film, having never seen it, but it's not that fun to play. If you're a major Batman fan, you may get some enjoyment from this game, but to everyone else, this is a title you can definitely skip. Desert Strike. Now, seeing the Electronic Arts logo before game isn't exactly a good sign. While they weren't as bad back then as they are now, EA is one of those companies like Konami that, as far as I can tell, were always terrible. And developers working under them managed to produce good games despite their publishers, not because of them. But this was back before microtransactions infested games, so that's a plus, right? In Desert Strike, you control a helicopter, and you go on various missions where you have to complete a series of objectives, most of which involve blowing stuff up. It's somewhat fun, but you die really easily. Moreover, the game doesn't really explain who you or the enemy is, so it doesn't give you a good reason to get invested in what's going on. Plus, without much context, we could easily be playing the bad guys destroying rebel bases. It has its moments, but it's not something I'd see myself going back to. Dynamite Headdy. A stylish platformer, this game subverts some of the traditional gaming tropes by having each stage literally being a stage. As in, you aren't actually a hero trying to save the day, you're just an actor pretending to be a hero. That and all the little fourth wall jokes and subtle visual humor really add to the game. But after all that, the gameplay itself isn't anything special, so it's worth a look, but not something you need to rush out to play now. Echo the Dolphin. This is a game I really wanted to like. I mean, look at it. You get to play as a dolphin who swims underwater, and the focus is more on exploration and puzzles than on platforming or combat. Plus, you can do this. Whee! Sounds like a pretty cool game, right? Well, the main problem is that the game is really bad at making it clear where you need to go next. I mean, I got stuck in the beginning area because I could not figure out what to do. I just kept swimming back and forth from one end to the other, trying to find the answer, but being unable to. It was only after looking up a walkthrough that I found out that to open the way forward, you have to leap high into the air, which will cause all of your dolphin pals to be abducted by aliens or something. And maybe that could be forgiven if that was the only moment in the game like that, but no, there are tons of places where you'll have no clue what to do and be forced to look it up. It's kind of like in Super Metroid, where the way forward is sometimes a tiny detail of a wall that's easy to miss, and if you do miss it, you'll be wandering around in circles for hours. Except in Super Metroid, you didn't have a limited amount of air that put extra pressure on you, but that's the case here. Echo can only hold his breath for so long, and if you don't find an air pocket for him to replenish his air, he'll die. Plus, there are lots of enemies that can be quite hard to hit that do a lot of damage to Echo. So while I like the concept behind this game, actually playing it just became too frustrating for me to continue. Kid Chameleon. I don't know about this game. I guess it's about this kid who can turn into a knight and a samurai and he jumps on things. It seems okay, but bored now. Next. Landstalker. This game is similar to Beyond Oasis in that it's an action game with RPG elements that is very reminiscent of the Zelda games. In it, you play as a treasure hunter, and you'll never guess what he spends the game looking for. While it seems like a decent game, I just couldn't quite get used to the controls and the isometric viewpoint. which can make some things, particularly platforming, rather awkward to handle. Still, if you're a fan of Zelda games or Zelda-like games, I'd say you should give it a shot. Mazen Saga. This game plays like a futuristic version of Golden Axe. It controls a little better than Golden Axe, but it just doesn't feel as fun to play. I don't know, try it for yourself and let me know what you think. Mega Bomberman. This game seems like it's fine, but I couldn't get very far into it. Mainly because I keep forgetting that my own bombs can hurt me. Yeah, I guess in this case I do just suck. Michael Jackson Moonwalker. This game is, interesting. Your goal is to kick bad guys and dance to inspire people, I guess? I don't know. It feels like this is a game that only exists because someone out there really wanted a video game starring Michael Jackson. I don't really see why that was necessary. If you're a huge fan of Michael Jackson, you may get a kick out of this game, but for me, I don't know, I like some of his music, but I wouldn't say I'm a fan of his, and I'm definitely not a fan of this game. Phantasy Star 2. When I was a kid, I remember visiting my extended family many times over the years. I have several uncles who are into gaming, one of whom introduced me to Half-Life and PC gaming as a whole, for which I will remain immensely grateful for as long as I live. But another one owned a number of consoles, including the Sega Genesis, and during my visits there are two games I distinctly remember him playing. They looked cool, and now, years later, I managed to find them again and decided to see if they were actually all that good. One of these games was Phantasy Star 2. Its sci-fi setting is a bit of a break from the normal fantasy setting of RPGs, and it did have some intriguing story elements and characters. But as soon as the turn-based combat started, I could tell this wouldn't be for me. Maybe I would have liked this if I'd played it as a little kid, but as a cynical adult who's just not a fan of this type of RPG, I just couldn't stick with it. Rocket Knight Adventures. This game is fun. Quite fun, in fact. Colorful graphics, smooth controls, and a take on action platformers that's familiar but still distinct. Plus, the main character can hang upside down by his tail. That's kinda cool. If only it didn't have a live system and limited continues. Oh well. Starflight. This is probably one of the most fascinating games for the Genesis I've played. In it, you play as an astronaut in charge of a spacecraft whose mission is to scout out new solar systems and planets. While exploring, you gather resources, scan for more data, and try to find planets suitable for human colonization. It's not too deep, and I'm pretty sure that other and much better space sims have been made since, but it's a nice little idea which makes for a decent game. Strider. I have very mixed feelings about Strider. On the one hand, it plays well, looks pretty nice considering its age, and the ability to grab onto ceilings and walls adds a new level of depth and interactivity to the game that other 2D platformers of the time lacked. On the other hand, this was originally an arcade game, and boy is that ever obvious. Naturally, there's my pet peeves of not just a live system but limited continues, and even beyond that, the game is really hard, and not in a clever way. A lot of deaths are unavoidable the first time, and so a lot of the obstacles are overcome not by skill but by trial and error. It's clearly a game that's designed to drain as many quarters out of you as it can, except that this version is on a home console so it can't do that, so it just wastes the player's time for no good reason at all. I'll admit that I did have some fun with Strider, but the level of annoyance I had with this game was rather high, and so frankly I don't recommend it. I have heard that there's a remake or reboot of this game, so maybe I'll give that a try at some point. Vector Man. This was the other game I remember from visiting my uncle's house. At the time I remember it looking so cool, and even now I have to admit that the visuals do hold up pretty well. The gameplay though, not so much. It's not bad, but it's pretty standard stuff as far as action platformers go, and of course there's a stupid live system. Warsong. This game feels like a blend between Fire Emblem and Advance Wars. Obviously this isn't technically the case, as Advance Wars didn't exist yet, but still. The combat system is unique, and I may give this game another shot in the future, though the game suffers from some of the same archaic quirks that other SRPGs of the time had. I've also heard that there's a newer game from the same series that came out not too long ago, so I may give that a shot too. And finally we have Zero Wing. The opening cutscene has hilariously badly translated dialogue, and I now know where the phrase "all of your base are belong to us" originated from. The game itself is a side-scrolling shooter. It's fairly fun, but like most games of this type, you die in one hit, which really kills the pacing. So that's it for the Sega Genesis Roundup. Next time I'll go over my top 10 favorite Sega Genesis games. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.